Hello, and welcome to my mold making tutorial. My client asked for a half-head sculpting bust made from his very own lifecast. Silicone molds and mold making in general range from simple to mind-blowingly complex. I try to keep mine on the simpler and cheaper side. Constructing the clay wall. I'm using wet clay here, and the plan is to cut it into chunks that can be cut into strips. Having an actual clay cutter on hand is helpful. Luckily, I found mine nearby. Always cut more than you think you need. I'm cutting them to roughly 2 inches wide. When applying the strips to the bust, I'm using a decent amount of pressure to push it against the surface of the bust. Remember, this is clay. Push it, form it, and curve it. This is a water-based clay and will dry out if exposed to open air for too long. Use small bits of clay formed into triangles to wedge into any openings and fill any cracks. Add more clay to support the clay. You are working against gravity after all. Keep mixing sticks or craft sticks nearby, as they allow you to smooth out large areas of clay. You can even use them to construct further support for heavier molds. I did not have a water-filled spray bottle on hand and realized rather quickly after I started the silicone process that this clay was at the risk of drying out and falling off the bust. Silicone application. This silicone was advertised as a mold-making silicone, and the price was right. It is a platinum silicone, which means it's okay to use for food and on skin. Silicone masks are made from it, silicone prosthetics too. It tends to be very runny, which made for about 6 or 7 coats in total. There are thickening agents made for silicone, but I didn't think to purchase any. This silicone is measured at a 1-to-1 ratio, so just the same amount in each cup. I overemphasize the mixing because it's fun to mix. Also, I knew I had 30 minutes to work with it and thought maybe spending 4 minutes mixing it would speed things up. It did not. The only time I used a brush for this brush up was on the detail coat and the second coat. For the rest, I used a craft stick, which allows me to smooth over larger amounts of thickening silicone. I changed the mold from upright to lying down to stop the excess silicone from dripping all over and to help it settle and thicken the area around the wall or the flange. It took more time than I had anticipated, more layers of silicone. Always be prepared to have time to devote to this process. Whenever I think it's going to be easy, something goes sideways. I adjusted my plan to mix a batch, drizzle a layer on the head, and wait 30 minutes for it to start to kick and wipe a thickened layer. I had my doubts about the strength of this silicone when I first brushed it on. It proved to be very strong. Plaster jacket. Here I am cutting away the solid silicone drips as straight as I can. I used both scissors and a box cutter. Next, I cut some cardboard pieces and fit them around the silicone, but ultimately decide to add packing tape to seal the cardboard since I will be laying wet plaster down and I don't want it to soak into it. I prop up the tape cardboard with small bottles of craft paint and clay where it needs for support. I try to get it as level as possible. I take small amounts of clay and fill in around the gaps between the mold wall and the cardboard. Then, I place longer strips of clay around the silicone, keeping it level as possible. With more clay, I build larger walls on the outside to stop the plaster from getting out too far. This is burlap. It can be purchased at any home improvement store or on Amazon. I love how it smells, but I might have just inhaled a bug. I cut it into 3 different size strips: large, medium, and little. They are to be dipped into wet plaster, and it will keep the plaster shell lightweight and give it reinforcement. I don't advise cutting things around animals or small children, unless you're on a time crunch. I'm using white hydrocal plaster. There is an actual mix ratio, but I've never used it. I use the dry riverbed method, where you take a bit of water in a bucket and sprinkle even amounts of powder onto it until it builds upon itself like little snow-covered mountains. Let it sit for a minute until the top has absorbed the water and creates cracks like a dry riverbed. Then mix it. Unfortunately, I failed to hit record for the splash coat of plaster, but you want a decent layer of plaster between your silicone and your burlap layers. Make sure no silicone is showing through. Wait for the first layer to gel. That's when it goes from shiny to more of a matte and is thicker to the touch. Mix the next batch quickly with slightly more water, less plaster. Apply burlap in an even fashion, vertically and then horizontally. Use smaller strips to build up low areas or use them to reinforce curved areas. I used the third batch of plaster to smooth the mold out and add a plateau so the mold will sit flat. Using the smallest rasp I could find, I've since named it Rasputin, I shaped the flat spot to make it even flatter and use it to clean the whole surface of any sharp pokey bits. Sometimes we're excited to open up the mold and make one and we get ahead of ourselves. I've had many molds break because of this rushing. Demolding is as much of a process as molding is. Take your time. You'll get there. I remove the clay wall and rasp the edges, flattening them out. Removing the plaster jacket was easily done by gently lifting it. Back during the first coats of silicone, I decided that my clay wall was most likely going to dry out and fall off. I used silicone to encase it to keep that from happening. It made for a rougher edge, but I'm happy it worked. Take your time when cutting silicone using scissors or a blade. It's easy to cut through too much too easily. Any silicone bits that hang loose run the risk of getting trapped in cured resin or whatever you use to cast, and then ripping the silicone, lessening the life of the mold. I take down any remaining sharp edges on the plaster jacket with the rasp and continue to clean up the uneven silicone edge, trying to keep it level with the edge of the plaster. I continue to rasp the edges of the plaster jacket to flatten them and check it by flipping it over to see how flat it sits against my table. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you learned something about silicone mold making. Take care.